and welcome to GCSE Product Design, Design Influences, topic number 10, energy. Okay, so in terms of what you need to know for your product design exam, it's looking at energy as a design influence. Okay, so that's looking at it in terms of energy sources, the difference between renewable and non-renewable, and slightly as its effect on the environment. So the first thing you need to remember is what non-renewable energy is, and that's energy that cannot be replenished. In other words, it cannot be made again in a short space of time. Examples of non-renewable energy sources are oil and petroleum products, natural gas, coal, and uranium, which is used for nuclear energy. You must also be aware of the impact of burning fossil fuels like coal and oil, and in terms of the amount of pollution that they produce, and that's pollution in the form of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and carbon dioxide. The actual names of these different types of pollution aren't important. The key thing is that when you burn a fossil fuel, you do pollute the environment. Interesting facts for you. There are only, they reckon, about 155 years of coal left, only 40 years of oil, and about 65 years of natural gas. Okay, so that's why they're non-renewable. Once they're gone, they're gone. So there's a very good chance in your lifetime that the world will run out of oil. Scary, eh? So how can we combat this? Well, we look at this thing called renewable energy, which is energy that can be replenished naturally. Okay, it's something that wouldn't necessarily ever run out if you're quite clever with it. There are 5 types that we're going to look at. These are called biomass. There are water or hydropower, geothermal, wind, and solar power. So biomass is essentially burning biological material. Biological material is just a posh word for wood. So burning wood to create energy. Hydropower is using water to generate electricity, driving that water through a turbine. Geothermal is using the heat of the earth. If you're in a country that happens to be sort of quite close to all the thermal sort of energy that's inside. I know a volcano is an extreme example, but for example, say Iceland has got lots and lots of this. It's the crust of the earth is very thin around Iceland, so they can tap into all this sort of geothermal power which is just under the ground. Wind power you see a lot in the UK in terms of the wind farms using giant turbines to generate electricity as they spin. And solar power you can see all over the country as well on people's houses as they're using it more and more. Now, one thing you have to be aware of is sometimes there'll be questions that are quite specific. So as a design influence for us, you need to be aware of, say, things like this, where since January 2009, so about 7 years now, you can't actually buy certain light bulbs. They all have to be a particular type based on an EU ruling. So one of the things you'd have to think about is how does this affect the design of lighting products? So it had quite a massive impact in terms of the type of lighting that you could actually use. So it led to quite a resurgence of all this sort of low voltage type lighting, but also lights that use energy saving bulbs as well. Now, the light produced by an energy saving bulb isn't as good as the light from one of the old style light bulbs, so obviously that's had quite an impact on terms of the kind of sort of designs and shades that people have been using. An interesting development in terms of lighting is using LED lighting, and in particular this Philips Hue, which I'd love to have some of these around my house. These are color changing light bulbs, so by using an arrangement of LEDs you can actually sort of dial up certain colors just to create whatever color you want, and these can all be controlled by an app on your phone, and you can set up certain lighting conditions. You can even match it to colors that you want, so you could take a photograph of a sunset in Spain and you could get the light. It would replicate that exact same sort of lighting. Okay, really cool product. Another thing you have to sort of workaround in terms of designer is the actual sort of, the source of energy that's going to be used in your products. For us in product design, that's working around batteries quite a lot. So for example, if you are designing a product that works on batteries, you're going to have to think about how it's going to be connected. You need to think about how you're going to replace the batteries, whether or not those batteries are held securely. You're going to have to think about what type and size of battery you're going to have, what sort of power rating you get. Especially now with all the environmental concerns, you're going to have to think about the disposal of the batteries, whether or not a rechargeable battery would be better, whether that's a rechargeable one that you can replace and repair, or if it's one that's permanently sort of hardwired in like you find in the modern MacBooks nowadays. You can't actually replace the battery. It has to go back to Apple for them to do that. Now this is sort of going into a bit of A-level sort of territory in terms of the amount of detail, but I've put it in there just in case you are interested in this, and there's no harm in knowing more than what you need. I've put this in from the A-level textbook about comparing the different energy production systems in terms of their advantages and disadvantages. A good thing to think about is which energy system do you think is the best for the UK, and explain your answer. That's why I've put that into your class notes. So by looking at some of these now, if you just pause the video on this and you can read through some of these and determine which one is going to be the best. Now, like I said earlier, questions can be very specific on the exam and might rely on info that you might just come across just by reading around the subject. So for example, a few years ago there was a very distinct question on low energy light bulbs, even though there wasn't a single thing about low energy light bulbs in the textbook. It was very quite open and ambiguous, this section on energy. So just be aware of that. It's not a nasty thing, because obviously you can still figure out 3 reasons why people use this product. You could also give 2 examples of renewable energy sources. It's just this particular question here, just worth 2 marks. Explain 1 drawback. Again, it may be something that just comes down to common sense. Even without knowing too much about them, you could have a good go at this. Alright, so just watch out for that. Now the question I'd like you to tackle is on wind power. So you've got a question here that shows the 5 sources of energy, and what I'd like you to do is to try and indicate which of those is a renewable energy source and which is a non-renewable, and then to answer these sort of slightly more sort of open-ended detailed questions. So in terms of energy production, wind powered generators are not 100% efficient. Explain why this is the case. In other words, why do they not convert to energy particularly well? And there'll be some help for that on the slide I'm just going to put up next. And same for the second one. Some authorities consider that wind powered generators to be the solution. However, there's quite a few people who don't support that view and think that wind power is not particularly good, and try and explain why they might think that. And I'm going to list some of those up for you now, and all you need to do is just pause the video here and you can read through some of these in terms of the disadvantages of wind power. Okay? I've also included some advantages which you can freeze on, and if you're really interested I could also give you some pointers towards disadvantages of solar power. Don't forget, pause the video if you want to read these. And some advantages of solar power. Okay, thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe.